Okay, it's time to begin. Hello, my name is Ysd Ranger.
And I'm Leon.
Are you listening me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes?
Yes.
Can I help?
Hear you, Delma.
Okay, okay. My name is Ysd Ranger. And
I'm Sandra de Leon.
Okay. We are the host today behalf of Hispanotech. Before I continue, I would like to thank Yelp for making this event possible. Also, thank you all of you for joining in this event. We hope to enjoy it and that you can take some ideas that will help you in your professional life in Canada. Okay, I would like to review with you our etiquette tips. The session will record it. Please turn on your camera to give consent or turn off your camera to object consent. If you have any question or comment, please use the chat. Please keep your microphone muted to avoid any distraction during the presentation. At the end of the session will be share a link to a survey. Your feedback is important to us. It helps us to know how we did and to continue to improve our event. Next. What is Hispanotech? Who are we? Hispanotech is a not-for-profit organization whose mission is to help Hispanic professionals integrate and advance their career in Canada. We are based in Toronto, but since last year, we have our event online due to COVID. What do we do to help our members? We do this in different ways, including volunteering opportunities, mentoring programs, skill development, seminars, networking events, and many, many more. I invite you to follow in our social network. Let me talk a little about Yelp. Yelp connects the people with great local businesses, with unmatched local businesses information, photos, and review context. Yelp provides a one-stop local platform for consumers to discover, connect, and transact with local businesses of all sizes by making it easy to request a code, join a wait list, and make a reservation, appointment, or purchase. Yelp was founded in San Francisco in 2004. This is our agenda. We have a Yelp about the community, and we have 3 speakers for 3 listens for today, okay? It's relating to, we'll have a short separate Q&A session. Okay, please welcome Brittany, technical recorded at Yelp. Welcome, Brittany.
Brittany, your mic is off.
I just noticed. Okay, sorry about that. Well, as I was saying, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us here today for Hispanotech. We are also happy to be here and to share more about Yelp. First, I'll do a quick introduction of myself. As mentioned, my name is Brittany, and I'm a technical recruiter on Yelp's tech talent team, and I'm based in the Bay Area. I have been at Yelp for almost 3 years and have been focused on bringing diverse talent to our engineering teams. Something that really stood out to me while interviewing at Yelp was the strong commitment to diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Whether that be through leadership, employee resource groups, or recruiting efforts, it has been intertwined in the cloth of who we are at Yelp. As soon as I joined, I was excited to hit the ground running and to continue to bring more diverse talent to Yelp and join ERGs that created a community for Yelpers. Next slide, please. You may ask, where are we currently hiring? We are hiring across all of Canada, from the East Coast to West Coast, so including Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, and British Columbia. We're also hiring some remote roles in the US, and then Hamburg and London as well. Next slide, thank you. So what has changed over the last couple years at Yelp since we have all gone through a pandemic? So we have changed our workforce to being a remote first model and hybrid. So meaning most of our employees can work 100% remotely if they'd like, or if they live near an office, they're able to go into the office as much as they please. I do want to make a quick disclaimer that this does not apply for every role, but the majority of them. So ask our team about the expectations for the role that you are applying to if you choose to. Next slide, please. Our offices have been opening, which is really exciting. From the beginning of this year, we've been seeing more and more people trickle into the office spaces. And so this slide shows our current open offices and offices we plan to reopen in the near future. So essentially what we do is you reserve a desk 24 hours beforehand before going in to visit, and then you get to enjoy working side by side with our coworkers. Our goal is to primarily create a flexible in-person office environment that invites collaboration, creativity, coffee chats, and hallway conversations. Next slide, thank you. Now that you heard of where we are hiring and what our remote first workforce looks like, sorry, that's a mouthful, but our remote first workforce, there we go, looks like, let's talk about our current job openings. As you can see on the list here, check out our careers page and apply to opportunities that fit what you're looking for. These are not all the roles that we have open, so please do check out our careers page because we have quite a bit more that might be of interest to you. Next slide. Okay, so what does interviewing at Yelp look like? So after you apply, our interview process is pretty straightforward. So after you find the role that you're most interested in and submit your application, if you're selected for the next stage, you'll be contacted by one of our recruiting team members. The process may differ depending on the role you're applying for, but generally, here's a quick breakdown. First, you'll be invited to jump on a brief recruiter chat for about 20 to 30 minutes where they will be sharing more about the role and ask a few preliminary questions. If there's a good fit, you'll move forward into a 30 to 45 minute phone interview with an engineering team member, a product manager, or a hiring manager who will further evaluate your technical skills and will answer any questions you have about the team or the role. And then finally, if there is a mutual interest in continuing, we will then invite you to a virtual on-site and interview with a panel of 4 to 5 individuals. This step could take anywhere between 2 to 4 hours with breaks planned in between. You would meet each person individually for a period of about 30 to 45 minutes. And then you will be in constant communication with the recruiter throughout the process, and they will be happy to guide you on how to best prepare for each step. For the folks that have joined the call that are interested in joining a role on our engineering team, we do send out coding challenges where you'll have about 45 minutes to demonstrate your technical and problem-solving skills. The test can be completed in a number of different languages, some of which are Java, Python, React, C++, Swift, and you'll have the opportunity to choose the language that you're most comfortable with. And after our hiring, so then going back to the first interview stage, after our hiring committee has determined that they would like to move forward, we will then match you to a team, potentially do thanks, Maureen, for adding that into the chat, but potentially do reference checks depending on the role. And then you'll have an informational call with the hiring manager, with the team that you've been assigned to. And then we will send out an offer letter once you've completed that call. And then hopefully we'll have you join our team. So you may ask, why Yelp? And I can tell you from my personal experience that has been one of the best companies I have worked for, and it's because of the people. I have made lifelong friends with some of my teammates, and outside of the people, it's what Yelp stands for. We support local businesses, support one another within the organization, and care about changing inequity within the workforce and the communities around us. Next slide, please. There are so many different ways to get involved in and get an amazing sense of belonging at Yelp. One way is by joining ERGs and affinity groups. So here is just a brief overview of some of the logos for our some of our ERGs, and I'll tell you a little bit more about a few of them. Next slide, please. So first one is Somos Yelp, and that is this ERG is a space for Hispanic and Latinx Yelpers to connect, learn, and lift each other up. They're passionate about embracing and showcasing our uniqueness, diversity, and care of the Hispanic and Latinx community outside of Yelp. Next slide, please. Here we have some pictures of more ERGs, sorry, just different ERGs. Next slide, please. I think we can go to and so here, another specific one I wanted to talk about was AW, or Awesome Women in Engineering. And AW's mission is to build a strong community for women in engineering, related teams, and their allies at Yelp by facilitating professional career building activities, networking, leadership, and mentorship opportunities. As you can see here on the slide, you can see some of the different social events that they've done. We do journey lines, reads, and book clubs, and quarterly mixers. So there's a lot of fun activities that these ERGs put on. Next slide, please. Another ERG I wanted to talk about was Color Coded, and our mission is to cultivate a community of engineers of color and their allies at Yelp by facilitating professional development and leadership skills, and networking events, and empowering communities of color outside of Yelp. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about what it's like to work at Yelp. The first word that comes to mind is community. There have been so many changes over the last 2.5 years, and having a community with other Yelpers that has been so important. We have supported one another during changes within Yelp and changes within the communities around us. So it's been an honor to be able to work with some of the people that we have by our side. Next slide, please. Here are a few fun moments that we have been able to share with one another. And this one is Spirit Week. This week was specifically fun because we had a week-long celebration to connect through virtual activities, such as bingo, comedy, music festivals. We shared a lot of laughter, silliness, and creativity during this week. Next slide. We also still have our hackathons. And so for the engineers that have joined us today, we have continued to have hackathon weeks. Yelpers get together for social coding events where they pitch ideas to the engineering team about cool features they'd like to bring to Yelp's platform. From there, folks join teams that intrigue them, and then they build those projects out. This is always such a fun week for us, and typically we typically have a theme for each of these hackathon weeks. and our most recent one was DIY. Next slide, please. Lastly, I'd like to shout out our events and partnership team. They work tirelessly to ensure we all stay connected internally and continue to allow us to share our great company through continued partnerships like this one today. If you're interested in joining more conversations about Yelp, we have our Yelping from Home series where we share and learn about other Yelpers, projects, and initiatives taking place at Yelp. They are open to everyone outside of Yelp, so come on and join us. They're really good conversations. Next slide. All right, and so I am going to pass it on to Nala. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany, for letting us more about Yelp. Now we have a short Q&A session about the Brittany or okay. Our first speaker for tonight is Nala Salem, a senior product manager at Yelp. Nala specializes in product managing B2B machine learning products. She leads a team in Yelp using ML to help acquire, engage, and retain Yelp local business owners. Her background including software developer and consulting. She has a Master of Business Analytics and an MBA. Please welcome Nala Salem.
Thank you so much, Idelma. I think let's get started and go ahead for the next slide. So I'm going to be talking to you today about how Yelp used its data to become a player in the local services field. So my talk is going to be a little bit more on the business side since I'm a product manager, and then the rest of the talks are going to be a lot more technical with my colleagues Fuad and Alex. So let's go ahead with the next slide, please. I'll talk about three things. The first thing is how, or the story of Yelp and building trustworthy, reliable content. Let's dive in with the next slide. Yelp's goal is really to be the most trusted way for people to easily connect with quality local businesses, and this makes us a valuable growth partner to high potential local businesses. So trust is a big thing for us, and building trustworthy content has been a hallmark of Yelp's success over the years. Next slide, please. Yelp has actually invested very early on in building trustworthy, reliable content, and we have multiple dedicated teams that work on this problem. So for example, the trust and safety team, which is sort of a sibling team to my own, works on things such as hate speech and traffic quality, so bot detection in order to prevent fake content, moderation, preventing abuse. We've seen some of that when we have launched attributes such as vaccine attributes or Black-owned and Asian-owned businesses. And we really think that this is a differentiator for us in the market and is a reason why our consumers come to us. If you want to know more, there is a lot of exciting things that we share on trust.yelp.com, and we also put reports on how we're doing and keep ourselves accountable. And when I came to Yelp as a new employee, the fact that this was part of my onboarding, the fact that sensitive things like spam detection were NDA'd was an indicator to me of how much Yelp really cares about these things and takes them seriously. Next slide, please. Second thing I'm gonna talk about is Yelp and local services. Let's go ahead and change slides if if you don't mind. So a lot of people think of Yelp as the website or app for restaurant reviews, but actually Yelp has diversified several years ago into the local services sector. So now if you go on Yelp, you can find reviews and connect with local services such as movers, lawyers, dentists, plumbers, all sorts of local businesses. Next slide, please. And providing trusted content has been something that we have invested in local services as well. So we have features that are specifically designed in order to provide consumers with content that they can trust. So we have things like verified licenses and portfolios that business owners can put on their profiles in order to build trust with their potential customers. Next slide, please. And Yelp over the years has grown its local services business tremendously. So I'm going to talk about a couple of features that we have developed specifically for local services. So the first one is called Request a Quote. This is an image of it that you can see here. So you not just see the business, the local business, and reviews for it and information about it, but you can actually request a quote from them for a specific project that you would like for them to execute for you and communicate with them in that way. And this feature was developed back in 2016. And then next slide, please. The other feature that I will mention is nearby jobs. So this is another way for you to connect with local businesses. So instead of going individually to different local businesses to ask them for a quote, you can submit a quote once, and then this Yelp will do its magic and connect you to potential business owners that fit and are around your area. And this is also a way for local businesses to get more leads using Yelp. Next slide, please. Because of the work that we have done and because of keeping trusted content as a pillar and investing in it over the years, we have seen tremendous growth from the local services sector, and actually now a bit over 60% of Yelp's ad revenue comes from local services. The request a quote requests that I was just talking about have increased by 30% over a period from 2019 to 2021 alone. And our 2022 focus is to keep growing quality leads and monetization in services, and trusted content remains a focus and also a moat for us in terms of the competition landscape. Next slide, please. So the last thing that I will talk about is sort of connecting the dots together and how data has been so crucial in our local services growth and how it happened. Next slide, please. We have something of a flywheel effect in our growth. So historically, and by numbers, people come to Yelp for trusted review content. In the past, this has been primarily in the restaurants area, but this has changed over time. But since we have all of this trusted content that keeps consumers coming back to Yelp, this has been an opportunity for us to start going into a new sector in which consumers are also available to are also able to connect to different other local businesses, and then by creating these connections, this helps Yelp's revenue grow, and by getting more local businesses engaged on the Yelp platform and reviews getting built for them, you get more and more consumers, and the cycle keeps going forward. And that's the last slide for myself. Thank you for listening, and I'll hand it back to you, Edelma.
My God. Thank you, Nala. That was an excellent and very informative talk. Now it's time for Q&A short session. Please, if you have any question in regard NALA at all, you can use the chat or unmute yourself.
Hello, I have a question.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Hi, yeah, I was wondering what, does Yelp provide data sets to third-party apps that they could use within their own data models for trying to understand how to be more helpful within the whole marketplace ecosystem?
Yep, Yelp has partnerships in which we provide our data as products. They're mostly provided at an enterprise level. So we have enterprise partnerships, rather than available as an API model. And yeah, if you're interested, I can find the public link about that work and share it with you. I don't have it handy, but for sure, this is something that we do.
Amazing. Yeah, that'd be really super helpful.
I have
Sounds
two
good.
questions about with the public. How do you go about developing a data analytics strategy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Yuting. I like to think of our strategy being more business oriented, and I think that this should always be the starting point. So the different teams that we have working on different data problems, they have partnerships with sort of sibling business organizations. So be that on the local business side, or on the consumer side, or on the multi-loc side, which is another exciting area of on the more recent side, area of growth for Yelp. And these different business organizations have their own strategies, and then we collaborate with them in order to execute their strategies, even though we're sort of technical teams that are technically in separate organizations. So yeah, it's more about developing partnerships, understanding the business area, and then individually the different data teams come up with their own strategies based on their understanding of where growth is going to happen and what the levers are, and how to leverage data for that.
Thank you, Nala. Very interesting answer. Jaime Gonzalez is asking about how it works for a travel agent, for instance, to get visibility.
So I think my understanding of that question is, there is some sort of small business and they want to, I assume, leverage Yelp in order to get more visibility. So that's definitely something that Yelp is very well poised to help small or big business owners to do. So the first step usually starts by the business owner going and claiming their business on Yelp. Most of the time, I don't have the numbers, but most of the time, I think the businesses are already on Yelp. If it's very, very new, they might create the listing themselves. So this is the step that we call claiming the business. So by doing, and this is free, by doing that, you're able to enter information about your businesses. Consumers can find you by going on Yelp or by searching on Yelp and you coming up. And then depending on your type of business, you can leverage different products that Yelp offers for the business owners. One of them is ads. So for a starting business, that's definitely something we see people doing, buying ads to get in front of their potential consumers. And then, yeah, depending, my work is, and what I talked about was more on the local services. So the products that I mentioned wouldn't be very relevant for, to a travel agent, but there would be different types of products. Once you claim your business on Yelp, you're able to log into a specific app that we have for business owners in which they can manage their listing and also get exposed to how their listing is doing, its performance, and what else they can do on Yelp to increase that performance.
Thank you, Nala. I have another question from Gabriela Urena. How do you support your employees' career path? Do you motivate and encourage them with training programs, etc.? Thank you.
So that's probably a Brittany question. So if Brittany is here, she can take it, or we can leave it till the end.
Okay, we can leave it in the end, these questions. Thank you, Gabriela. And I don't know if you can answer this. How do you approach data if the data is not statistically significant?
Yeah, that's a great machine learning question as well from Yuting. So we, I hope, design very proper experiments in Yelp. So that goes for my team, which is applied machine learning, and our data science team as well. And, you know, from what I've seen, we do apply in Yelp the standards that you would expect in a proper experiment, meaning you set the standard of success beforehand, you let an experiment happen, and then you assess the results and whether or not they are statistically significant. There's also a lot of stakeholder alignment on how the experiments are supposed to run beforehand. Product managers are a big part of this as well, because they can explain to the business owners the, you know, technical implications of different choices in an experiment that a business partner might not necessarily, you know, understand right away. And and of course, we see a lot of experiments in which there are, you know, directional lifts or things like that, but no stat sig results. And in this case, usually and this is a good thing, because if no experiments are failing, this means that we're not really innovating and trying new things. So this is not necessarily a bad scenario, but usually what ends up happening is the idea is not given up right away. Usually you go back to the drawing board and you think about the problem and what can be another solution to the problem, or another experiment design in which you come up with something that would help you move forward.
Thank you, Nala and Sandra. Now it's time for our second speaker. Is found Yusef. He is a data scientist who joined Yelp multi-log data science team in January 2021. The team support lot product and sells stockbroker with evidence for strategic decision-making impacting your largest mid-market and enterprise clients. Fong has 12 years of data science experience in banking and healthcare. He is an activity member of Toronto data science community. In 2018, he founded to Coding High, a Toronto-based training program that offers high school students and professionals a series of artificial intelligence workshops. Please welcome Fong Yusef.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Fuad. I'm a data scientist at Yelp, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about how Yelp uses data to drive physical store visits to businesses. Next slide, please. So first, I'll start off by telling you more about the data science team structure within Yelp and the type of projects that my team called MLOC focuses on. I'll finish off by focusing on one of the specific products that Yelp launched a couple of years ago called Yelp Store Visit, or YSV for short, which involved the use of big data and machine learning. This project was also a big collaborative effort from engineering, product team, and data science team. So I'm really excited to talk about it. Next slide, please. But before I tell you about my data science team, let's take one level up. So data science at Yelp has two big categories that support each other. There's the consumer team, which focuses on engaging Yelp users with the right business. And there's the biz teams that focus on supporting biz success by connecting them with relevant Yelp users. The biz team, as you can see on the slide here, are organized into two focus areas. So there's the local team, which works with businesses that have 4 or less locations. And there is the multi-location team, which works with businesses that have 5 or more locations. And that's the team I'm part of. Now, Yelp recognized a few years ago that businesses which are growing and opening multiple locations have different needs and require a unique set of products and tools. And that's why they started the MLOC team. So the type of work, we work on different pillars from experimentation to ad product and ad attribution to some support MLOC or multi-location businesses. But before I dive deeper into the product I wanted to talk to you today, let me introduce you to the concept of attribution for those of you who are not familiar with that. Next slide, please. So you can think of attribution as the process of connecting the dots between ad exposure, that's when a user sees or clicks on an ad, and the actions they take after or as a result of that exposure. We also call them conversions. So there are many different types of actions or conversions that a user can take after seeing an ad. For example, a user can make a phone call to the business, a user can check their biz page on Yelp, or can check their website. But the one action that I wanted to tell you more about today is store visits. Next slide, please. So how does Yelp Store Visit or YSV work? So let's say, for example, an advertiser launches an ad campaign on Yelp. Many of our users have actually opted in to share their locations with us. And this data has enabled us to measure the number of times users visit a biz location and identify what percentage of those visits can be attributed to a specific ad campaign. These metrics that we generate are then summarized in reports, and we share them with the businesses so that we can help them understand the value of their ads and how they can better optimize their future campaigns. Next slide, please. Now, when it comes to machine learning application on big data and machine learning are actually applied at multiple stages throughout this YSV product. So the first step is really to detect if a user is making a visit by detecting if they're stationary for a period of time. We then gather a list of businesses around that visit, and then a machine learning model is applied to predict which business the user is visiting. The business with the highest visit probability gets that visit. The model uses a variety of signals, such as the type of business, the business hours, the time of the day. And once we actually can predict those visits, then we can then identify which of these visits can be attributed to an ad. And to do that, we look at something called the attribution window. So that's the time window when the exposure happens to the conversion is called the attribution window. So for example, if a user clicks on an ad and then visits a store within 24 hours, we can say, yes, this visit is attributed to that specific ad. But if they visit after 30 days, then this is too long. So that visit is not really attributed to that ad. Then more machine learning is applied at later stages to extrapolate these visit numbers to all the users, all the user base. Next slide, please. And finally, once we have the metrics, like I mentioned before, we can generate Ysd reports, which contain many, many valuable insights. And we share them with the business, like I mentioned before, to help them understand the return value of the ads that they're running on Yelp. So some of those insights include what business locations had the highest number of visits, what was the cost per store visit, what is the percentage of visitors that are classified as new visitors and haven't visited that store for the past 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. And these reports and metrics are extremely useful for the business owners to make data-driven decisions to help their business grow. This is, next slide. This is the end of my talks. I'm happy now to take any questions if you have any questions.
Thank you, Fawn. All information you shared with us is so valuable. Now it's time for Q&A short session. Please, if you have any question in regard phone call, you can use the chat or unmute yourself.
I have a question here. How do you do about defining the parameters of attribution window, and how do you determine causation?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Yutang. So the first question is, how do you find parameters for attribution windows? So attribution windows, depending on the company, the platform, can vary. But the one thing that I want to highlight is that depending on the action itself, so there's a difference between impression and click. So impression is when a user just sees the ad, and a click is when they click on an ad. So I guess with click, it means that there's more intent, that they are clicking on it. So with click, maybe you can allow for a longer period of time. So you can do 7 days, for example, or you can do up to 30 days. It really depends. You can really vary that window. But with impression, they just viewed the ad. There was less intent, so you can maybe shorten that window. But you can definitely play around with the window and then see how that works. The other important factor is that it also depends on the business that you're dealing with and what kind of products they're selling, what type of business it is. Is it a restaurant? Is it providing a service? Because the type of service they provide will kind of help you identify what that attribution window is. Now, the second question is, how do you determine causation? So with causation, I think Nahla also already mentioned that experimentation is a big component of any work that happens within Yelp and any decision making that happens within Yelp. So any causation needs to happen after a proper experimentation is done, where we take users and test 2 cohorts or 3 cohorts. And do it properly. Controlled environment, we split the users randomly, and then we give them a specific experience, and then we do that comparison, and that will help us figure out the causation. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I have another question. How does Yelp assess which ads work better than others?
Great question. So like I mentioned before, experiments are very crucial in helping answer that question. So we are constantly working on different ad formats. There are so many different factors also that contribute to which ads work better than others. It's for example, the placement of the ad. Where does it sit? Is it sitting on the homepage? Is it sitting on other pages? Where's the position of that ad within the page, the placement of it within the page, what type of picture is being used. There are so many factors, and within Yelp, whenever we are working on a new ad product, there's always an experiment that is conducted, a proper experiment where, again, like I mentioned, we split the users and we expose some users to a specific ad format, and then the other users will be status quo. And then we'll be able to actually quantify the differences between the two. Is one specific ad driving more clicks or driving more impressions compared to the other ad? And that's how we go about deciding if that specific ad product is it working better than the previous one? And then we decide whether or not we want to launch it and move forward.
Thank you. Can you give an overview about Yelp data science team culture and how they collaborate with other teams?
Yelp data science team culture is amazing. People are extremely friendly. They are very knowledgeable, and I love the fact that they're very helpful and willing to share their knowledge. So that's definitely one thing I really enjoy about working at Yelp and data science within Yelp specifically. Now, in terms of collaboration, there's a lot of collaboration that happens within Yelp. As a data scientist, you are constantly on a daily basis interacting and engaging with product managers. You're also working with engineering, you're working with sales. So it's a very versatile position where you're constantly working with multiple teams. And that's why communication is very crucial as a data scientist, to be able to communicate, to understand the problem, to kind of explain the outcome and the results, because those results are usually used to drive decision making. So very, very, very collaborative, very friendly.
Thank you. I want to work there.
You're welcome.
Let's see, last question. What are some ways that your work in Yelp data science is unique from your previous data science work?
So I've worked, this is the first product company that I work for. Previously, I worked in banking and I worked in healthcare. And the one thing that I love about Yelp compared to the previous experiences that I had is the collaborative work, like I mentioned before, all the partnerships that you can establish with other teams, but also how it's fast-paced work. So you can come up with an idea, innovative idea, you can pitch it, you can start prototyping it, and then develop it in such a short period of time. So start to end, you can actually see results within weeks or months. And that's really exciting. And it's not really something that you can find in other companies. Sometimes the process takes very long, and it might not actually, you might not actually see the end results. But within Yelp, I've worked on so many projects already. I've only been there for a year and a half, and there were so many projects that I was able to see finish and get released. So that's very, very exciting.
Thank you. I guess this was the last question. Thank you so much, Fuad.
Thank you.
We come back to you, Idelma.
Okay, thank you, Fuad. Now I want to present our final speaker, Alexander Martinez. He is a software engineer who joined Yelp Data Infrastructure Organization 2.5 years ago, initially as a member of the stream processing team, and later become a member of the SQL team in July 2020. During his time at Yelp, Alexander has been both a project lead and member of various initiatives. When he is not behind a monitor, Alexander can be found exploring as much of New York City as possible since his move to the city in October 2021. Please welcome Alexander Martinez.
Thank you, Idelma, for that beautiful introduction, and thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, this is our final talk from Yelp. I'm coming from our database reliability engineering SQL team. So we're in charge of developing basically the infrastructure and providing our MySQL databases to teams at Yelp. Next slide, please. So before digging into our use case of the test for data sanitization in order to protect our MySQL data at Yelp, I want to briefly get into an introduction about our MySQL setup basics. To the right here, you can see a diagram. Basically, it's a mapping of our replication hierarchy for our MySQL clusters. To the very left there, you can see what is called the primary. This is the origin of our single source row-based replication. So all of our writes are processed by this host. As we continue down to the right through the replication hierarchy, we come to the intermediary host, which basically serves all of the replication for all of our leaf hosts. At Yelp, we have different roles for our leaf hosts. Some of them can be consumer or internal facing, whether for experimentation or other use cases. Though as far as for the data sanitization purpose with the test, it's our replica roles that we that are restricted to the leaf level that we actually use to source this data that we end up sanitizing before producing it into our sanitized development environment. Next slide, please. So previously, there was two ways we went about this before we rolled out the test as a solution. Originally, we had a trigger-based MySQL 5.5 replication, which is like statement-based. Basically, every time you ran a MySQL statement, the binary log stores that SQL statement in order to run it against the tables, in order to change them. And this way, we basically triggered anytime we saw some sort of potentially sensitive information or like personal identifiable information or any sort of like thing we would want to scrub. These triggers would basically identify the data to scrub and then replace it with some sort of value or new data value there. Two issues that we saw with this original method was A, the data correctness caused by this trigger-based method. We weren't always guaranteed the types of data that we see on the other end, and also ensuring that the trigger always covered our data values that we might need to remove. Additionally, one of the issues was once we performed this sanitization, we usually had issues actually keeping it up to date or deleting the data in the future. It wasn't as easily accessible as we have it today. And then as opposed to this initial solution, we moved forward with MariaDB, which provided us a row-based replication. So basically the changes in the individual rows for our MySQL tables, being able to store those in binary logs and apply those changes as necessary. However, running both the MySQL and the MariaDB instances or tooling obviously led to a couple complications and problems. For instance, MariaDB does rename quite a few commands that MySQL uses. So oftentimes our runbook developers or our team would have to consider these as we carried out work going forward. Additionally, for all of our tooling, we would have to maintain both a version for MariaDB and MySQL. Obviously, this led to additional overhead for our team and developers that use them. And then finally, since both MySQL and MariaDB require different backup types or implementations, we required to have different systems for those as well too. Next slide, please. So moving forward, we decided to try out basically or proceed with the test in our environment as a solution for providing these sanitization rules instead of the trigger-based or MariaDB solutions in the past. Up in the upper right-hand corner there, you can kind of see a basic layout from basically the migration database is what you can consider our replica host. That was our sanitization source previously mentioned. That's then fed basically or grabbed from by our Docker containers that run all of our VT or the tests containers that we'll discuss about. As you can see here, there's VT tablets, what's called a Vttld container. Basically what these do, Vttld allows you to run a lot of the commands, and the tablets themselves are basically in charge of copying the workflows over and maintaining their replication streams once they're done. For our deployment, we have over 2,000 VT tablets deployed across dozens of machines in each of our ecosystems, so development stages, production, and then as well as ecosystems for particular services or things that are needed. Each of these VT tablets are designed by Vitesse basically to produce the replication or what they call V replication for these workflows. In our case, we run over 6,000 distinct workflows to materialize the data from one database instance to basically our sanitized cluster in this case, which shares no traditional MySQL replication. So if you recall that diagram previously of our replication hierarchy, these databases would be completely separate. There would be no linking chains in there. Additionally, since we had no sharding needs, which is an additional use case for Vitesse, we decided to go with a more slimmed down deployment. So this entailed that we proceed without what some may know as Vttld and some of the other toolings that come in right out of the box, and hence why we're only running the Vttld and Vttld containers in this image up here. Next slide, please. So digging into particularly the materialization logic for our Vitesse infrastructure, first off, it allowed us to replicate this data, our unsanitized data, making sure that it's never actually replicated to the sanitized server. So none of these actions are being performed in a sanitized ecosystem or environment. It's all being done beforehand by Vitesse, by the rules that we build prior. Instead of data being retrieved directly from the source, or instead we're able to retrieve it directly from the source through our rules that were predefined depending on different teams' use cases or the table data that exists that we have, whether it's like emails, numerical information. We can find different ruling for that to provide either omitted values or replaced values for developers or experimentation. And when we set up when we originally set this up, we basically iterated over all of our existing tables that had sanitization ruling through the MariaDB processor triggering based process and created a purpose-based rule, basically whether or not data was present, ended up defining our JSON configurations and then the Vitesse configurations for those rules. A lot of the Vitesse docs, if you dig in, should have examples as well that are present here, kind of what examples of kind of these, it's basically like a select statement for Vitesse. And then you can filter out the type of columns that you want to include or not include based on your use cases. And then lastly, we also store all of our created workflows in a simple Git repository. This allows us to potentially use these workflows for later use, whether or not a stream crashes, allows us to rebuild that with the original rule. Or if we need to change a rule, for example, if we do have custom rules for a team and they start to add new data and it's not previously included, we can include that data going forward as well. Next slide, please. After our deployment and some of our testing, we did find there were some performance considerations, especially with tests based on our initial deployments. Initially, we found that restricting number of tablets running on each server was beneficial, mainly due to the requirements, resource requirements to manage our binary logs and the daily streaming from our original database clusters to our sanitized environment. And additionally, given the number of tablets and workflows that we were running, we did find that when a large number of these workflows eventually did crash or terminate and we needed to rebuild the state of our Vitesse infrastructure, we found that staggering these or stopping and starting in a staggered fashion improved the real-time processing time that it took to catch back up compared to if we tried to restart all of the workflows at the same time. Oftentimes this is due to the Vitesse Vttld tablet, containers being able to track the binary logs that were being processed at the time. And yeah, additionally, as you can see to your left here, we do have kind of an example of how we break this down. So for example, the number of tablets that we do run on each of our Vitesse hosts in the upper left there, you can see varies. Usually we try to maintain this under about 50 tablets per host, given based on some of our previous findings. Anything over that, we found that a lot of the resources were overly used for the host. And then below here, you can kind of see some of the makeup of our different databases and how our workflows are separated into them. So as you can see, the main database is, as we guess, basically associated with one of our larger monolith systems, and therefore a lot of our workflows and tables exist there that we've sanitized as well. But that concludes majority of my content. I believe the next slide, please, opens us up to the question section for this talk.
Thank you, Alexander. That was impressive and insightful. Now it's time for Q&A short session. Please, if you have any question in regard Alexander talk, you can use the chat or unmute yourself.
Okay, I have some questions for Alexander. And can you tell me why is it important for companies to go through data sanitization?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so the main reasons basically are from your, at least in Yelp's example, is kind of like our values, protecting the source, but similarly for other companies, from your initial database data, you possibly want to use this data for other use cases down the road, whether it's exposing it to different data science teams for reports, or even experimentation for developers. And you don't want to provide or have some of this information that may, for example, sway some of the experimentation, or you don't want revealed. And so it's good to have different, obviously for MySQL, this is our solution for this, but obviously as well for other data sources or data replication methods like Kafka and those types of things. You want to have this considered so that you can expose those for those use cases down the road.
Thank you, Alexander. I have a question from the audience. What are your thoughts on Agile, Scrum, Waterfall, XF, XP, etc., when it comes to development teams focused on data infrastructure?
To be honest, I think that really has to depend on like the team and the actual members of the team, like the makeup of the team that you have there. I know within our own team that we use kind of a, we do have our sprint cycles and like weekly scrums and such, and we do our stand-ups, and it's our own hybrid model, and that works for us. But also there's other considerations when thinking about this, obviously, like how much time does your team spend on improving the current infrastructure or maintaining existing ones, especially if you have larger like monolithic code bases, there might be more maintenance involved. And that obviously might change how you kind of plan both like your projects and also your road mapping in that regard, and how you want to scope that out, or how you want to like what tooling you want to use as far as within the short term for that as well. So I wouldn't say that there's necessarily like a correct choice of those for data or infrastructure from my perspective.
Okay, thank you, Alexander. I have a question from Angela. How does engineering team collaborate with product data science team at Yelp?
Yeah, so basically I would say it's almost every day, depending on like the teams and the projects going on. But like as for example, for our team as being the owners of MySQL, we're usually the first point of contact when teams want to know how best to utilize the data or access it. If they have a new use case that they think might not previously been done, on how to like replicate the data somewhere else or manipulate it, those types of things, we'd kind of be like the first in line to reach out and support our developers with. So in that regard, yeah, it's pretty frequent. And then also obviously like when there's planning going on, like we usually like leverage each other's ideas. So obviously the data scientists and product teams are the ones that really leverage like pushing different new products against our existing technologies, and we continue to build these technologies and grow them in a way such that they're easier to use in the future as well for these teams. So I'd say like cross collaborative, obviously, to reach the goals of both the business and for the consumers.
Thank you. I have another question. Do you have any advice for people who are joining infrastructure team?
Honestly, I think, regardless of like what part of your career you're in, I think the biggest thing is like be prepared to obviously communicate with not only your own team, with other teams. It's going to make your job and other jobs a lot easier and make progress a lot faster too, as well as like your onboarding type of thing. Additionally, you're always going to want to ask questions, no matter how, whether it's your first day on a job or your 1000th day. Technologies are always changing. even within your own team or others' teams. So always asking questions to potentially people that might have more specific domain knowledge will help make your journey a lot easier. And then also, you're always going to have to get your hands dirty. When you join any team, there's going to be new technologies or potentially systems you're not used to or familiar with in the same scope that you previously were. And so obviously leveraging your mentors or coworkers, but also being able to like get in there and dig into the systems and kind of playing around with different ideas with yourself, like whether code wise or playing around with SQL are really helpful as well too.
Thank you, Alexander. And the last question that I have is, what's been the most interesting part of your experience at Yelp infrastructure team?
That's really tough. I would say like it's a three-way tie. One, I've been really lucky to work with some really amazing engineers within my own team with a lot of experience before my own time, whether it's like previously I was on the stream processing team or now on the SQL team in both these domains, different domains. Additionally, like the other co-workers at Yelp teams and orgs, all they provide, whether like previous experience or current experience in the projects they're working on, but also being able to actually like make an impact for small businesses and users. I was always like a user of Yelp myself, even when going to school in Vancouver, British Columbia. Like anytime I was like in a new city, so being able to actually help like develop the data infrastructure landscape for a product like this that's in so many people's hands is a really rewarding experience as well.
Okay, our Q&A session ends. Thank you, Alexander. Now it's time for a short session for general question. You have any question about our event, or you want to make some question one speaker, you can make in this moment in this session. You can use the chat or activate the sound in the microphone.
I have some questions, and I don't know who can answer this. I will just shoot the question and see which one wants to answer it. Have you guys seen an increase in GTP3 generated content?
I personally have no idea what this means, so I probably can't answer it. I don't know if someone else can.
Okay, let's see the next questions. This is
Sorry,
for
I'll quickly jump in there.
Okay.
Honestly, I think like we've had some publications done from like our text analysis like teams and stuff. I think their work's probably be better to analysis, but like yeah, as far as like deep learning used to like create reviews, I would say like as far as our site's concerned, we probably have one of the hardest times seeing that because of yeah, since day one we've had this like existing systems that kind of determine all this as to what might value a good or high quality review compared to maybe other sites. So no, I would say like personally, I can't speak from like the exact examples or anything, but yeah, I can't. We're not in a full on fake news state yet, from what I can tell. But maybe someone else can correct me on that, obviously. And like I said, I think better off is a lot of our engineering posts have better content on this. And additionally, I think we should have some more blogs coming out on that blog as well too.
Thank you, Alexander. Let's see, this question is for Fuad. If a user has multiple touches with which might have contributed to final conversion, how do you determine which user action or add to attribute to?
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question again?
Let's see. If a user has multiple touches, which might have contributed to final conversion, how do you determine which user action or act to attribute to?
That's a great question. So there are different models that we use. You can do first touch, you can do last touch, or you can do multiple touch, where with the first touch, for example, the first encounter is the one that is counted. The last touch would be the last impression, or the last action is the one that is counted. Speaking of some of the projects that I have been involved in, we usually provide these three options in the project that I've been involved in, and then we let the stakeholders choose which one they want to use. But the three of them are feasible, and the three of them can be used.
Thank you. Let's see, I have another question here for you guys. How do you work together to address trust and safety issues such as fraud and spam reviews?
I can speak briefly to that. This is not something that I personally work on, but as I mentioned, we do have dedicated teams in Yelp that work on things such as bot filtering and spam detection, and actually the spam detection work specifically is NDA'd, so even if I try to ask, no one will tell me how we do it. Because this is, sensitive, protected information that, even if a Yelp employee becomes a business owner one day, they will not know how that actually works. So, as I mentioned, this was an indication to me of how seriously Yelp takes trust and safety. Yeah, Fuad, I don't know if you have any technical information to add to what I just said, but that's essentially the extent of my knowledge.
Mine as well. I don't know what. I'm sure we have a lot of machine learning algorithms and teams that are working, and applied scientists that are working on this.
Thank you, guys. I have another question from Yuting. How do you structure your user stories for database data intensive features? Did I already read that? Or no?
Yeah, no, you read it right. Thank you. Alex, do you want to speak to how your team organizes your
Yeah, like
work?
I could provide at least like the kind of like support we provide for teams like looking to create new databases and such. For example, like we kind of have like a form process for teams when they're creating one. The AMP asks like a handful of questions based on their use cases. That kind of helps guide us and them to determine the best data store for their use case. And then additionally, we obviously have like a lot of documentation or like best practices that we've developed over the years, whether based on business cases or just other services in the past that we help leverage as well for new systems and stuff that come out from teams that use our data, like data stores, for example, Mysql.
Thank you, Alexander. I have a question for Brittany. How do you support your employees' career path? How do you motivate and encourage them with training programs or etc.?
Yeah, I can answer this partially. I think other folks on the engineering side and product side might be able to go into a little bit more detail and training. But for the most part, well, not even for the most part, but we have a leveling system here at Yelp. And so we have IC1s through IC6s, and then we also have M1s through M6s. And so with that, it's a really good structure to be able to talk with your manager about growth and how you get into each of those different levels, and then also work with your team. And so each level, of course, has a different level of responsibility. I feel like I'm saying level a lot, but it has a different level of responsibility. And so, you know, as you're growing within your career, as you're growing with your mentor and with your manager, you kind of just see how that measures up to the next level that you're looking to get into, whether you're looking to go the individual contributor route or if you want to go get into management at some point. And in terms of trainings, I'll let someone else talk on that because I'm not sure how it works specifically on the product and engineering teams.
So we do have a professional development budget that's allocated to us specifically for our own growth, and we can choose that, and individually each person can choose what's best for them to learn in terms of training and courses. Yeah, there is a process to it, but I feel that that's the best answer here. I don't know if my other colleagues want to add something.
Yeah, even internally, we have a lot of learning groups. For example, I facilitate a data science learning group that meets on a regular basis, and we do workshops, we do journals or articles or any new discoveries that people are interested in sharing or demoing. So there's a lot of that happens. I believe even the data analysts, they have their own group where they meet, and they have such sessions which are very, very useful. And we are always encouraged to check out conferences if there are conferences that fits what we're working on. So a combination of both of these.
Yeah, I would add, we additionally have like a lot of mentorship opportunities or mentee opportunities that provide a lot of like both internally within your own org and like externally, a lot of resources, like whether from previous Yelpers to help like kind of like within like training as far as like different skills and stuff, but also like documentation or resources to kind of learn best practices and those types of things too, as you kind of like strive for different levels.
Yeah, and I can also add that's great reminder, Alex, for mentorship. That part of the employee resource groups that were discussed earlier, some of those have their own mentorship programs as well. So the Awesome Women in Engineering, for example, has its own mentorship program.
Thank you, guys. I guess that tomorrow HR are going to have a lot of applicants. I have some questions here. I don't know who wants to answer it. Do you have any advice for staying connected to your team in a remote setting?
I can take a swing at this one. I think in your personal team, whichever team you're assigned to, I think a good way always is we have Slack channels. And so we are Slacking each other all the time. You can pick up, or not really pick up, but like have huddles within Slack. You can video call people, and having like a cadence on our team, we call it an accountability buddy. And so we rotate every 3 weeks. We rotate to a new team member of like who we'll have a weekly chat with, and we can talk about work, we can talk about personal things. So really just like facilitating that communication with each other, team wide, and also you know, individually with different team members. And then we also still do like quarterly offsites. We've done some really fun ones, and they've all been virtual so far. And as offices start opening up, hopefully we'll start doing some more in-person events. But you know, we've done some really fun ones like chocolate making. Yesterday actually we did one, and it was all about how to bartend and like make different booze, and that was pretty fun. So so we do a lot of things to stay connected, and I think it's just, you know, taking that initiative to make sure that you are connecting with each person on your team, and being intentional about it.
Yeah, same here. So in my team, we have a daily stand-up, and twice a week, we dedicate about 15 minutes for an online game that we all play together since shifting to being remote first. And we also have quarterly offsites, and a recent experience that stands out. We did an online or a virtual visit to a farm that's operating as a rescue shelter. So that's by far has been my favorite.
Okay, thank you so much.
Let's see, I have two last questions. What are some training programs or material for product managers to grow their career?
Yeah, I guess that question is for me. I think the discipline is less about being academic and more about getting exposure. At least that has been my own experience. So by just there are a ton of talks and conferences, and we do some of that through the Yelp from Home series as well, which you can follow, that in which product managers talk about how they approach different types of problems. It really varies depending on where you are. Are you just starting, or are you a senior product manager? But just by seeing how other people are approaching their own problems, you can sort of get a sense of where you want to grow. So for example, if you want to grow more into the product strategy side, then then you probably need to do readings in that area. If you're starting out, then you probably need to read things about how to define a problem, or how to write a good user story. My recommendation in terms of books is Empowered by Marty Kagan. That's definitely a very good one, and also Dan Olson, the Lean Product Playbook, and it talks a little bit about the product market fit, which of course is very important. And yeah, other than that, I think it really depends on what your area of growth is.
Thank
Thank
you
you so much.
I have the last one question.
Okay. Last question.
Yes, last question.
Okay.
Do you have any recommendation for resources to study before transitioning to the big data field?
I can try and take that one. I'm assuming, well, it depends. So the thing with data science is that it is it's multiple skills that need to happen depending on where you are and what stage you're in. But the three main components, the way I see it, is there is the coding component, there is the machine learning component, and there's the stats. And there are different ways you can do it. You can either combine them all together and try to learn them all together, or if you want to kind of pace yourself. If you're trying to pace yourself, the first thing I would do is I would do coding. I would learn either Python or R. These are a great starting point. Both are widely used. And while you're doing that, then take some stats courses and machine learning courses. Now, it depends also on the level of dedication. Do you want to dedicate a lot of time to do this transition? Or are you doing it while you are working, so you're doing things on the side? You can start small by checking out some blogs. There's a collection of blogs that are great at starting to learn about machine learning and stats. But if you want to take it further and you want to do it more seriously, there are some programs in Toronto that you can attend, or certificates that allow you to do such transitions. I know that U of T the School of Continuing Study has a great data science program, 12 months or a year, where you can do that transition. There are some private companies as well within, or training companies within the city that would allow you to take such certificates. But again, it depends on how intense you want it to be and how many weeks, months you want to take. But feel free to. I've done a lot of research in this field, so if you have any questions, feel free to email me, and I would be happy to help you get into that field if you want.
And if the question was based on the data infra side, as someone that's come over from the ML side, previously as an ML engineer and researcher, I would say more like previously math background. So as Vttld said, like a lot of the stat stuff there, but more so a lot of leveraging like Python, and also the technologies like Flink, Kafka, and understand like the logic and stuff and how those actually apply, I think are some of the biggest. And obviously like O'Reilly's books on any of those like concepts as far as like streaming systems or data science, I find it's like a really good starting point, especially if you're switching over into a new domain or trying to get some initial perspective.
Thank you so much for our speaker for amazing talk today. Thank you so much. Okay, continue the next slide. We are invited to our next event. Hybrid event is in July 15 at 3 p.m. Our speaker was Carlos Chavieco. You can, okay. Thank you, our volunteer, for your participation. You are a great person and you are a great volunteer. Now, please answer our survey. It will take you a minute. You can find the link in posting the chat. Please answer our survey. To learn more about Hispanotech, you can review our social media. You can follow us in LinkedIn, in Twitter, in Facebook. You can visit our website, or you can become a member of Hispanotech member. Thank you all, and see you at the next time.